Give us an example then of what you would do now differently at half time than what you maybe would have done before this kind of introspection.
Well, the first thing I did at Newcastle, and you just reminded me, is I set up a different area. So the changing room is obviously the changing room. You'd expect most talks to be done in the changing room, but I almost wanted that to be the player space. So there wasn't a room. We created a room. So we knocked down a few walls and built a room next to the changing room. And when I do my halftime team talk, I take the lads in there, and in there's a couple of tactics board and a TV, and it's a much more, well, it's a separate space. So you try and get the lads' attention.
Yeah.
And their focus rather than their fiddling around with strappings and things in around their area, which they would normally do.
And where did you learn that from?
I didn't actually. That was just an idea that came to me.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So then how do you work out, because obviously you had a year out of the game, right? So there's a million ideas coming all the time. How did you decide which ideas stuck and which ones were kind of discarded along the journey?
Well, I think you're right. And you don't want to, I didn't want to change everything because a lot of what I'd done had worked over a long period of time. So it was a case of really looking at, as I said, a lot of training sessions that I did, I loved, and looking back, there was a lot that I'd forgotten that I wanted to bring back in. So you've got to be very careful that you don't throw out the good stuff and bring in stuff that you're not so sure about. And also it's got to be you. It's got to be coming from your ideas and your method, not things you've seen from other people that you copy. That doesn't work. So it's got to be fully embraced my work. And I did go out, and I was very fortunate enough to see a lot of teams work around the world. I think I worked it out earlier. I think there's about eight different clubs around the world that I went to see and learn. And, you know, that in terms of is like gold dust, because you very rarely get a chance to do that when you're working.
So when you go into these clubs, like, what do you look for? You know, like when you've been invited in as a visitor, that beyond seeing like the surface level of like a training session, what other kind of things are you looking for on those visits?
I think the first thing you're looking for is the culture of the place. So not so much the training sessions as such, because I think they're pretty much universal. Everyone likes to think they're unique and different, but the reality is there are probably similar things going on. But the culture and everything behind the scenes is what you rarely get to see. So I remember going to see Saracens, being visited to see Saracens Rugby Club, and the culture there. Now rugby is different to football, but immediately it was different. It was a different kind of feeling, very coach orientated, very hands-on. A lot of laptops around the training pitch. I remember one of the players leading, I hope they don't mind me saying this, but one of the players leading a team meeting and about the opposition. So he'd been watching the opposition, not the coaches, and he was telling the players what to expect. So some really eye-opening things that can only, again, would I take everything that I saw? No, because some things wouldn't relate to football, but there was a culture there that was hugely successful and very powerful.
I'd love to delve into some of the stuff you've got written down that you've brought with you today. Would you mind just sort of talking us through some of the stuff that you've written and brought with you from this period? What does it start with?
Well, the first thing, why did I fail? Assess my strengths and weaknesses.
Well, why did I fail? Should we? You see it as a failure, right?
Yeah. So
Let's be clear about that to start with.
Yeah, I saw that as a failure. Yeah,
a personal failure.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I think when you're managing, my feeling is that you take ultimate responsibility for what happens, and I felt that I didn't do my job. Probably for the first time as a manager, I'd not delivered what I felt I could deliver.
Right.
And I felt I needed to take accountability for that, for myself, not for anyone else, for myself, to go, right, okay, then why? And why so many different, there's no one reason.
Yeah.
Loads
so
of different.
I'm interested in a bit about you feeling that you were no longer delivering, because I imagine, and I've never been a football manager, but you're at Bournemouth and you're still doing what you've always done, and you're still as dedicated, and you're still not sleeping at night because you're worried about result. So at what point are you not doing or not delivering what you, like letting yourself down? Like, did you change what you were doing? Did you lose the drive, get disillusioned?
No, none of those things. No,
right.
I worked, I can look myself in the mirror and say it wasn't through lack of effort or commitment or anything to do with anything connected with the job. But clearly from what I felt, the results and the performances weren't what they could have been. And ultimately, I think you have to then take responsibility for that as the leader of what's going on. But then, as I say, there's no one reason as to why anything doesn't work. There's probably 15 to 20 little things that go to make that big performance not right.
And that bit about not knowing whether you'd go again, was there ever a point where you thought, maybe I wouldn't go back into management after that experience?
Yeah, there was, because I did football management because I loved it, and I loved helping people. I loved developing footballers and trying to help change their lives. But I wasn't doing it necessarily for me or for the money. So when I came out of it, I was like, well, let me reset and see what I want to do. There might be something else that comes up in my life and a direction that takes me somewhere totally different. I then realized very quickly that football is in me and it's not going to leave anytime soon. So as I said, it took me 3 or 4 months to sort of get over that and then go, right, now I'm going to get going again in football and in football management.
So we get quite a few queries from people that listen to this podcast that find themselves at a similar crossroads to what you described, of debating whether they're on the right career path or whether they need to pivot and go in a different direction. What kind of advice or tips did you learn about this period of introspection that others could maybe apply, of how they go about asking themselves that question?
Well, I think I stayed away from football for that time. So in that 3-4 months, I really did stay away from it. I don't think I did any media. And my first sort of coming out of it was the media work. And I felt I was asked to do lots of different things, like Jake saying, and I refused everything. And I think then the first thing I did was Monday Night Football. So I sort of stayed away intentionally to see if I missed it and I wanted to do it again.
Right.
Rather than sort of surround, like going to games straight away or going here, there and everywhere straight away. I sort of, maybe on a subconscious level, thought, no, stay away, see if you miss it. So almost that absence was key, I think.
And what came next in your work?
So then the podcast and books. So I loved the Sir Clive Woodward podcast with you guys. I was fascinated by him, and I'd met Sir Clive a few times, and he did a presentation for my players at Bournemouth. And the Paul McGinley book that you kindly sent me, which had a couple of unbelievable quotes on there and sections in his book. If anyone hasn't read that, then please do. It's about the Ryder Cup and his the way he formulated his team to try and win that cup.
Do you remember what stood out to you from Paul's book?
Oh God, you're testing my memory now. I can't remember which one it was. I think I sent you a picture of what did this mean, because I think there was a quote next to a rock or a mountain or something.
Yeah. You're right. Do you remember that? It was about the storm will come.
Yeah.
He had in his book, he had a thing on the wall, didn't he? And it was an image of a huge cliff face and the sea hitting it. And he was basically saying to his players, like, expect the storm will come. But knowing, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, if you can expect it, you can accept it. And it stops, in that case, golfers, in your case, footballers, from being derailed from the storm when it arrives. Yeah.
And that probably resonated me from where I was in my life at that moment. So I was intrigued by that. And then you sent me the book and I thought the book was absolutely brilliant. So the podcast and reading books, because it was at the time with COVID as well. So I couldn't always get out and about like I'd want to. So then I had to seek learning from home. So I think that was improving me was massive. And as I say, a lot of I went abroad as well. I went to Spain twice. I went to Denmark, did one national team visit, and also spoke to some former managers as well. So I spent a lot of time out and about when I could with COVID, speaking to the people that I felt would help me.
And on a personal level, Eddie, what did you learn during this period about yourself as a partner and a parent?
Naturally, when you've been in work like I had been and committed to my work, I mean, the commitment it takes, not just from a physical perspective, as in not being at home, but even when you are home, as you both know, that mental, someone's talking to you, but you're not taking it in, or you're thinking and planning of something else while someone's asking you a valid question at home, or you're not really there a lot of the time. And I felt I wasn't. So I was like, right, I'm going to use this time to really be at home.
Yeah.
And one of the first things I did, and you'll think this is probably a bit of a crisis moment, I brought a camper van. So I thought, right, I'm going to take this camper van, around the country with my kids. And I'm really going to give them the time. And we did. And we went on a few trips, and it was really, really good. And I think it's something I look back on with huge fondness, really.
Yeah.
So I remember some wet weekends in different places, but brilliant for me at that time, and hopefully brilliant memories for my kids as well.
And what did you notice about your relationship with the kids?
Well, I was able to do things that I'd never done. So taking the boys to school, picking them up,
Right.
and little things like that you think, it's just amazing. I loved it. And obviously did wear off.
Yeah, sure.
But I loved it. I loved being that dad. I took them to cricket matches. I stayed away from football, but so I really invested in their lives. I was there for parents' evenings and stuff, things that I'd never been. But I think that the big thing is where I got my coaching fix, and this is quite interesting. The only coaching I did in my time out from beginning to end was with my boys in the garden. So I was actually getting a little fix, developing them and thinking of drills, with 3 boys in the garden.
And how did they respond to their dad doing that?
Terribly.
Did they?
Was there any element, because when we spoke, you said you were quite strict about this being a year out of the game, and I think some job interviews or some job opportunities came your way in that year.
Yeah. Why
would you not have been tempted after 7 or 8 months to say, you know what, I've had 7 or 8 months of this. I know I said it would be a year, but I'm going to go back in early. Why did you turn down big jobs to fulfill an entire 12 months?